Good evening, everyone. How you doing? My name is Brett McCann. I'm the principal at Streetsboro High School. With us today, I have Miss Taylor, who is joining us by chat and actually already joined in. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. As you can see, I'm actually not at school. I'm actually at our neighborhood pavilion. My wife, long story short, is doing a little cookout for all of our neighborhood kids who are starting virtual learning tomorrow and taking place in a little pod. So even though I am the proud principal at Streetsboro High School, I'm not even the own principal in my own house, but that is okay. That's a story for another day. So I just wanted to take the time, Ms. Taylor and myself, to kind of just go over any questions that you have, go over our reopening protocols again. And then we have some questions that were submitted in advance that we'll go over. And then from there, some of you I see are already taking advantage of the chat box option, which is awesome. So if you do have any questions, you can go through and ask those questions in the chat box. And kind of what we're going to do, if there are any questions that might have a quick answer to it, like for example, will water fountains be open during the school day? Miss Taylor will jump in the chat and she'll answer that way. If there's a question that might be a little more long-winded and require more than just a chat box response, then I'll take it using this platform. So we had a really nice turnout this morning with about just under 30 people, and so we're looking forward to having some more tonight. So before we get started, just kind of go over the formats. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to go over some key points of our reopening plan once again. Then we'll go over the questions that were submitted either yesterday or earlier today, and then we'll go over any questions from the chat that you all might have. So to get started, the first thing that we wanted to talk about was just kind of what the start of our school year was going to look like. And so we wanted to start off by talking about our soft start. So this is something that we're really excited about. Mr. Dawbaugh and the Board of Education were super supportive in our idea to have this soft start. So what it's going to look like is we are going to break our students up over the first 3 days. So our freshmen are going to come in on September 1st, our sophomores are going to come in September 2nd, and then our juniors and seniors will come in September 3rd, and then all students will start on September 4th. So a couple quick notes about this. The reason why we are doing this is we have a ton of structures and protocols that are really changing this year in our building. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide everyone the opportunity to kind of do so in a more structured environment. So our teachers who are not teaching that day. So for example, on September 1st, any teacher that has sophomores and seniors exclusively, they won't have any students in the building, but they're going to be working throughout the day to kind of help our freshmen out with a number of the processes that we have in place. And we'll kind of talk about what those are a little bit later. Also, one of the things that we're going to be doing during this soft start is we are going to be passing out Chromebooks. So that's when our Chromebook distribution is going to take place. So again, that's going to make it very easy and painless. So you don't have to worry about coming to the building during off hours or making sure that you have to worry about getting up to the building or not. Everything's going to be taken care of in-house. That's going to kind of be our soft start. One other important note to our soft start is that our seniors, even if you have late start or early release, you will still be reporting from 7:25 to 2:25 that first day. So for example, if you do have a late start, you'll come in at 7:25. We're going to have a class meeting to start in the auditorium. And then from there, your first period, you'll just hang out in the cafeteria and you will be supervised by a staff member. And then starting on Friday, the 4th, then you'll come in and you will you'll run your typical late start schedule. So that's kind of the explanation for our soft start. Next thing, our student arrival. You may enter the building starting at 6:55 in order to receive supervision. If you are dropped off by a parent or guardian, you're going to enter through door 15, which is on the right side of the building, which is right next to our staff parking lot. Students who drive themselves or anyone who rides with a student driver, you're going to enter through door 6, which is on the side of the baseball and the softball fields. Students will be spaced out 6 feet apart in either the cafeteria or the auditorium until the bell rings, and the bell is going to ring at 7:12, and then at 7:12, students will be dismissed to their first period classes. Any student who takes a bus, your process is going to look a little different than even it has in years past. So you're going to be dropped off in the back of the building, and the goal is to have all of our bus riders dropped off right around 7:15, and then from there you can enter right through the doors as soon as you get there, as long as you get there after 7:12. Any kid who has a first period class on the first floor is going to enter through door 3 in the back, and any bus rider who has a first period class on the second floor is going to enter through door 2. And the reason for that is we'll talk about our traffic pattern a little bit later, but it's going to make our traffic pattern a lot easier to maneuver throughout the day. So that's going to kind of be what our student arrival looks like. Next thing is cleaning protocols. So we're going to have hand sanitizing stations set up throughout the building. All of our classrooms currently have hand sanitizer in each classroom, as well as sanitizing devices. So what we're going to do, the plan is that for each class period, we are going to have students wipe down with their own paper towels their desk area, so we can ensure that as you come in, you're working with a clean surface. So the spray sanitizer will be sprayed on by each staff member, and then the kids will grab a paper towel as they come in, and then they will wipe from there. Additionally, some other things that we're going to be doing is the district has purchased fogging machines. So we have a fogging machine that is going to clean each classroom every night. And then at least one time per week, we have also purchased a Clorox 360 machine, which is an electrostatic sprayer, which does more of a deep cleaning. Those will be used at least one time per week in each classroom. Our goal is to eventually have those 1 to 2 times per week per classroom with that Clorox 360 machine. But the disinfecting with the fogging machine will be done in every room every single night. Next one is lunch. So in regards to lunch, that's going to look a little different. So we are going to have all of our students spread out 6 feet apart because in order for them to eat, they have to take their masks off. And if their masks are off, they have to be 6 feet apart. So our cafeteria is only going to be running at about 50 to 60% capacity with everything that we have going on in there. So we're going to bring some desks into the cafeteria. So students will also be able to eat at individual desks that are 6 feet apart from others. And then from there, what we're also going to do is we're going to also open up our band room and then also our auditorium so students can eat in those areas if need be as well. One other thing that we're doing is all seniors will eat during their intervention period. So during their intervention period, they'll go down to the cafeteria, they'll eat in those areas as described above. For 5th period, what our seniors are going to do is our seniors then, instead of going to the cafeteria, they will either be heading to our auditorium or they're going to be hanging out in our new kind of senior lounge, which was formerly known as our community classroom. So we've moved some of our flexible seating that we currently had in our hall areas and then also in our media center. And those are going to be placed in our new kind of like senior commons area. So that's what lunch is going to look like. So again, we have to be creative, but the goal is to make sure that kids are spread out 6 feet apart. And then also what we're going to look to do is we're also going to try to make sure that we're giving students the ability to go outside periodically if they want to go outside and eat maybe on the cement or just kind of eat on the grass and have a little picnic outside with some friends, as long as they are socially distanced, of course. Next thing is hallway traffic. So this is going to be one of our big things. And our goal is to try to get video sent out before kids come in so they have an idea kind of what the hallways look like. But we're going to make all of our hallways in our media center area and then also in our academic wings will be one-way hallways. So those will be very clearly marked. Our floor is already made up with arrows in the hallways that very clearly show the one-way hallways for each area. So that going back to the bus riders entering, there will be only, we have 3 sets of stairs in our academic wings. Each set of stairs will only be one way. So we'll have one stairwell going up, and then the other 2 stairwells will be going down. So to make it the easiest for the bus riders, that's why we were very specific as far as which door you have to come in, depending on what your first period classroom looks like. Next thing we want to talk about is our clinic area. So we are going to have kind of a clinic annex, and that's going to be a conference room just off of our normal clinic. So the protocol is that if a student has symptoms for COVID, then that student will be isolated in our normal clinic. We will then move all of our clinic to our clinic annex, which is going to be just the next room over. That's also where all of our meds are going to be stored. And then from there, we're going to make it so that student is safe and comfortable, but isolated in our clinic area. And then in order to make sure that our clinic can open again, we need to make sure that we get that with our 360 machine. So anytime that we have to go into an isolation with a student because of COVID symptoms, we will make sure that we sanitize that before we reopen the main clinic area. In regards to if a student tests positive for COVID, what that kind of looks like and what that process looks like, because I do want to talk about that as well. So if a student tests positive for COVID, myself as the building principal will reach out to Mr. Dawbaugh. Mr. Dawbaugh will then get in contact with the Portage County Board of Health. From there, what's going to happen is the Portage County Board of Health will reach out to us, and what we're going to do is all of our classrooms will have predetermined seating charts that are going to be based off of a very particular order. That'll kind of be it'll be very specific. So in the case where we do go hybrid, all of our students will be spaced out 6 feet apart. So each teacher is going to be responsible for turning in their seating chart to our main office. We will then turn over those seating charts as need be to the Portage County Board of Health, and then they will make contact with any students or staff members who then have to quarantine for 14 days because they came in direct contact with a student with COVID. So if you don't hear from the Portage County Board of Health, then you have nothing to worry about. Our district will not reach out to anyone in regards to quarantining. That will come directly from the Portage County Board of Health. We'll also take our cues as far as how we are to communicate with the school as a whole in regards to students and then families if we do have issues with the Portage County Board of Health as well. So we're going to be taking all of our cues from Portage County Board of Health. They're the experts in this, so we want to make sure that we're following all of their guidelines. Last thing that we want to talk about is visitor protocol. So we're going to do our best to make sure that everything that we do as far as visitor meetings is done virtually. So like maybe you want to meet with a school counselor, maybe you want to meet with myself or Ms. Taylor, maybe you have an IEP or a 504 meeting. The goal and the expectation is that all of these meetings are to be done virtually. We had a lot of success with this via Google Meet or Zoom in the spring, and we want to continue this because we also want to limit the amount of visitors that we have coming into our building. If there is anything that needs to be dropped off, what you're going to do is you're going to go into door 1, which is the bullpen area just outside the main office. And then from there, we're going to ask you to just ring our main office and talk about what you have and who it's going to. We're also asking that you mark those items. So let's say, for example, that your daughter forgets her lunch. You're just going to mark her name in there. You're going to ring the bell. Our office staff will communicate with you. You'll just say, hi, excuse me, my daughter, Katie, so-and-so just forgot her lunch. It's out here. Can you please make sure it gets delivered? We'll then take that lunch either to your daughter or we'll send a pass for her so she can come down and get it herself. But we are asking that we don't have any visitors in our main office area. And then lastly, and most importantly, if you are dropping off materials, please make sure that you're limiting those to essential items. The two big ones that come to mind are lunch and medication. So like, for example, it's a little bit chilly in our school. If make sure that we're limiting visitors and limiting any transactions with our students, taking them out of classrooms on an absolutely as needed basis. Those are our big things as far as our reopening. So I'm going to go back kind of to the chat and look at any of the questions. We'll go through those in just a little bit. But first, I do want to go over the predetermined questions first. So we'll run over these real quick, and then hopefully we can have all these questions answered for you, and then we can get to the chat with any other questions that you might have. So first question, I have a freshman student who will be attending RDA for the first semester. Please advise if there is a plan in place to help her transition back to the school to get acclimated to protocols if we decide to send her back for the second semester. So that's a great question. So we are going to do our best to make sure that we do host kind of a welcome back invitation, if you will. So probably what we'll have to do is that will have to be after school. We're not going to ask any of our RDA students, or we're not going to open up our building up to any RDA students during the school day. So we'll do something after school to make sure that any kiddo who is on RDA that plans on coming back for the second semester does get acclimated with our one-way halls and what our cafeteria setup looks like, what classrooms look like. So we will make sure that we do that. We'll probably look at doing that in the beginning of December to make sure that any student who is coming back feels safe and secure and kind of knows the protocols moving forward. Next question, will the parents of students who are attending school digitally still receive updates on the school status and if any changes are being made to procedures, protocols, and so forth? So as far as we know, all students will still be enrolled in Streetsboro High School, which is great. So as long as you're still enrolled in Streetsboro High School, you will still get all of the communication that is sent out by myself and then Miss Taylor as well. So, for example, the weekly emails that will go out every Monday, any all calls, you should still receive those. So you should be on the up and up as far as any updates that might be made to protocols, cleaning procedures, so on and so forth. So there should be no changes there. So that shouldn't be anything that you have to worry about. Next question. As you know, we have our first home game / senior night for the girls on Saturday. When and how will tickets for soccer games be distributed? How will this be done for home and away games? If you don't have this worked out yet, when will it be determined and communicated to soccer teams? So we reached out to our athletic director, Mr. TV Paw, today. And we do have those protocols in place. Before we kind of get going, I want to give a shout out to Miss Taylor, who had the great idea to move all of our senior nights up for all of our fall sports teams. So just on the off chance, and hopefully not, but on the off chance that we do have to postpone or cancel seasons due to COVID-related issues, we can make sure that we still are able to honor our awesome senior class in an appropriate way. So our senior nights are all taking place very early. I think they'll all be done by mid-September. So the protocol for all of these events is going to be the same whether our team is home or away. So the day before any event, at the end of each practice, your team's head coach will get a set of tickets, and those tickets will be passed out to each student. So, for example, for football and volleyball games, each volleyball player, football player, cheerleader, and band member will receive 2 tickets for each game. Each soccer player will receive 4 tickets for each game. The reason for the discrepancy is because of capacity issues. So with volleyball, our gym is very limited in the amount of people that it can hold. Same thing for football. So we have to abide by ODH and governor mandates, which state that we can only have 15% of our facilities filled to capacity. So after running those numbers, that's why we determined that each football game and each volleyball game, all student participants will get 2 tickets, and then each soccer team will get 4 tickets per participant. So that's how it's going to work, whether we are home or away. So the tickets will be given to the kids, and then from there, the kids will then disseminate those however they want. Hopefully, parents and guardians out there, they give you guys first dibs, but the kids will kind of have the ability to break those up however we want. Our stadium and our gym will also be clearly marked as far as where you can and cannot sit. So, like, for example, in the stadium, we have X's marked 6 feet apart, so you need to make sure that you're sitting in an X area. The only exception would be if you come, maybe if a daughter's mother and father come together, then obviously you can sit together, but then any person who's not part of your family has to make sure that they are 6 feet apart from everyone else. So we will have compliance officers. We will have Mr. TV Paul, myself, Miss Taylor at many of our events to make sure that is being honored and that is being fulfilled. Because again, we want to make sure that we are being safe, and we want to make sure that we can continue having a fall sports season. Next question, can students use their own laptops? So the answer to this is yes. So we are going 1-to-1, which is awesome. We talked a little bit about how laptops will be disseminated. Students are able to use their own laptops with a couple of caveats. The first one is we have to make sure that obviously you can get internet access. Hopefully that will not be a problem. The second thing is that we want to make sure that it is a laptop. And the third one is we have to make sure that it can run on Chrome effectively. And the reason for that is that we want Chrome to be the default browser for everyone, as it is for our Chromebooks. And the reason for that is because our primary will facilitate all of our classrooms, even in person, but especially if we go into a hybrid or remote model, will be with our Google Drive platform. So that will include Google Classroom, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Meet. So we need to make sure that it's compatible with Chrome. So as long as it's compatible with Chrome, as long as it's a functioning laptop, and as long as it can pick up internet access, then yes, you are able to bring your own device with you. Next question, for students, will the kids be going to the cafeteria, getting what they want, and then bringing them back to the room that they are to eat in? Are we still going to use pay schools for lunch accounts? So I believe this question was answered, but I'll go over it again. So for lunches, all of our students are going to be eating in the cafeterias spaced out 6 feet apart. So we're not going to be going back to the classrooms like what they're doing at the elementary. It's a little bit easier as far as what that looks like to pull that off at the elementary school than it is the high school. So we want to make sure that our kids are 6 feet apart. That's also going to give them the ability to have a mask break, which again, being 6 feet apart, they'll be able to do. So they'll take off their mask. We still want them to have some type of social setting with kids that they might not see in their classes. So kids will be eating in the cafeteria. And then as far as pay schools, we're still going to use pay schools for our lunch account. One thing that we are working on is we're working on utilizing our student IDs to kind of just swipe through. So instead of having to use pin pads, which we still might have to use as we get acclimated, but the long-term goal is to make it so our student IDs can kind of just be swiped and kids can go through and use their Pay Schools account, which will link up to their student IDs. So that is the goal as far as what the lunchroom will look like. But whether it's the cafeteria, the band room, or the auditorium, our kids will be eating in an area with each other and will not be eating in classrooms. Last question that we have as far as the questions that were submitted in advance. What are the kids who have sports supposed to do with their sports bags during the day if there are no lockers? Great question, and honestly, one that we did not think about until about 48 hours ago. So what we have decided to do is we are going to open up our lockers in our school just for our athletes only, and those will only be accessed before school and after school. So we are going to work with our coaches and our athletic department to determine who needs lockers, and then that's how lockers will be divvied up. So our first preference and our biggest preference is that if you are a student athlete that drives, or you know a student athlete who drives, our goal is for you to keep your materials in your cars. So especially if you drive, you will not be granted access to a locker. So we're going to open up a very limited amount of lockers, and we're going to be very strict. So for example, if we grant a student athlete access to a locker, if we find that they're going into that locker, let's say fourth or fifth period, that locker access will be revoked, and then they will be on their own as far as how they're going to store their baggage area. So we are going to open up lockers, but those lockers are only to be used from about 7:10 to 7:25, and then from 2:25 to 2:35. If they are used anytime during the school day, those privileges will be revoked. So that answers all of the questions as far as what was submitted in advance. So it looks like we still have a few questions. Oh man, we got a lot of questions. So I'm going to try to catch up here. I'm going to see what Miss Taylor was able to get and what she get. So when would parents be notified if our student tests positive? So if your student tests positive, we're not going to actually conduct any COVID tests in the building themselves. If you feel that your student does have symptoms of COVID, then we are asking that you go get tested. And then if your test comes back positive, then we need you then to communicate with us in the building. If a student in your child's class tests positive, you will only receive a notification from the Portage County Board of Health if your student was exposed. So what that means is less than 6 feet away for more than 15 minutes. So if they don't meet that criteria, they were not exposed, and therefore they're not considered a contact by the Portage County Board of Health. So you will not receive any notification. So if you hear nothing from the Portage County Board of Health, you can assume business as usual. Look at my daughter's schedule. She does not have an intervention listed. She is a senior. When is she supposed to eat lunch? So all students will eat lunch during intervention if you are a senior. So if it's not listed on your schedule, as soon as that intervention bell rings, any senior will just go down to the cafeteria and they will eat business as usual. Next one, are there any remaining openings to participate in the remote learning option this semester? So as far as that's concerned, it looks like Ms. Taylor answered that question, but if you do have any questions in regards to Rocket Digital Academy, those need to all be sent to our curriculum director, Mr. Isle, at the board office. Next question, Chromebooks are distributed during soft opening for students. Everyone, that was Ms. Taylor, sorry. What about school supplies? Are the high schoolers getting Chromebooks? I think the middle school children are getting one to help with books. Yeah, so that question was answered by Ms. Taylor, it looks like. So yeah, all the kids are getting Chromebooks, and then also there is an email that was sent out as well with a list of things that we're asking kids to bring in. So hand sanitizer being one, pencils, color pencils. If your student does not have a calculator, we're asking them to purchase a scientific notation calculator. Those are just like small red calculators. They're only $10. They're very inexpensive. And then headphones. So we're going to be utilizing headphones a lot throughout the year as well. For things like projects, pre-recorded videos, maybe tests that are being read aloud. So it's important that kids also bring headphones. That full list was sent out in the email and the newsletter that went out yesterday. Our student IDs distributed on the first day of school. So like Ms. Taylor said, we are hoping to we are hoping to have IDs ready by the first day of school. That is something we have to talk with our company Life Touch with about, but we will go from there. Next question from Brooke. If we start getting positive tested, will we go hybrid or only if the state color changes? So there are going to be a lot of things that we look at as far as if we go into hybrid or if we go into remote. So a couple of things that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the Portage County designation. So that'll be one data point that we look at. We're also going to be looking at Streetsboro specific data. So the state sends out zip code specific data. So we're going to be looking at that data as well. So like, let's say, for example, if Portage County maybe, let's say, goes into red because there's an upswing at Kent State, but if our Streetsboro data is still low, that's going to be another point that we're going to look at. We're also going to look at issues within the building. So if we have an outbreak, let's say at one school, and we have a severe student outbreak or we have a severe staff outbreak, that's also something that we're going to be looking at. Mr. Dalbaugh has stated that if we do have an outbreak at one school, he is leaning towards shutting the entire district down just because of how many siblings we have. And how many staff members kind of work between buildings. So to answer your question, unfortunately, there's not one specific data point that we're going to look at. We're going to take all of the data points that we have between county data, Streetsboro city data, and then also the data that we have from our schools. And we're going to kind of synthesize all that information to look at making decisions whether or not we change and go into a hybrid, or if we decide to go into a traditional, and then vice versa, looking at going back into possibly reopening if we do go into one of those issues. Stephen Richards asks, if a student is in school and becomes symptomatic, when is a test administered and by whom? So once again, if a student is symptomatic, that will be up to the parent to get the to get tested. We're going to go through. So if a student does come down and is symptomatic, our nurse is and then myself will get in contact with those students. So if they are symptomatic and we feel that there is a possibility that student has COVID, we are going to follow protocol as far as Portage County Board of Health as far as what that looks like. And so we'll communicate with them as far as the next steps. But we cannot personally administer tests at the school. That has to be done through a private entity, whether it's through your doctor, whether it's through one of the drive-through clinics that are being offered throughout the state. What do students do with their golf clubs when there's a match that day? So that is a great question. So as far as that is concerned, obviously golf clubs cannot fit into a locker. So we are going to talk with our golf coaches about that. And then what we'll do is by the time school starts, we will communicate via the golf coaches. So Mr. Thomas and Mr. Foster will communicate with their teams as far as what the plan is for golf clubs if there is a match that day and they do have to get their golf clubs. So we have a couple ideas, but we want to run that by the coaches, then also Mr. TV Pod to make sure how we want to go about handling those. So that looks like the end of the chat. If there's anyone else, if you do have any more questions and you're watching, feel free. Miss Taylor's done a great job as far as answering any questions via the chat. And hopefully, all the questions via the chat you feel have been answered sufficiently. One thing that Miss Taylor did want me to talk about is book bags. So with book bags, students will have to carry their book bags with them throughout the day. So we're going to ask them to kind of lighten their load a little bit. That'll be one huge help as far as one-to-one is concerned. But make sure that students know that they will not have access to their lockers. So like, for example, even if you are a student athlete, you will not have access to the day. So you need to make sure that you are bringing your book bags with you. And then also it's going to be very imperative that students check their emails. We're going to really hammer home emails to our kids. Obviously, that's something that not all kids are super familiar with doing. but we want to make sure that if we do have any pertinent information that needs to be communicated immediately with students, we will use email. So that's going to be a team effort. We're going to really preach it at the school. Please make sure that you are also preaching that at home. And that's just good digital citizenship. Nowadays, it's just good to check your email early and often. Even if you just get into a habit of checking it once or twice a day, please make sure that that you're doing that on a regular basis. New question just came in. What about the band instruments, since there will be students in the band room at lunch? Great question. So we have worked with our band director, Miss Coyce. So we're going to make sure that any band instruments are locked up during the day. So whether they're locked up in an individual locker or whether they're locked up in one of the practice rooms, all of our band instruments will be locked up, and they will not, any students who are eating lunch in the band room will not have access to any of those as long as the students are locking them up properly. So that should not be an issue. Ms. Coyce and I have kind of already talked about that. And my guess is the first day that Ms. Coyce will, I know she has a set structure that she is in the process of finishing up. So she'll communicate with band students directly as far as what the protocols are for making sure the band instruments can be locked up. So that's a great question. Obviously, we want to make sure that all of our materials, whether it's athletic bags or band instruments, are being kept safe and sound. The last thing Ms. Taylor is texting me and wants me to mention is our traffic map. So we do have a traffic map in place for what our traffic pattern is going to look like, and that will be sent out in the next day or two via email. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. Basically, if you are a parent or guardian that is driving your child and dropping them off, once again, you'll stay to the right of the building. So you'll go towards the side closest to downtown Streetsboro, and then you could just kind of do a quick loop, drop your student off, and then you will exit back onto Route 14. So that is all that I have. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I'll kind of wrap up from there. If you do have any more questions, again, feel free to throw them in the chat. But I wanted to just reiterate to all of our families and our community members and our students just how hard our teachers are working and how excited they are. And there's no doubt, like, I'll be totally transparent. Like, our staff is nervous. There's angst because a lot of this is just unknown. But I can also tell you that I've had a lot of conversations with staff just trying to get to know them. And it's so evident and clear how much our staff really cares about our kids. And it was so refreshing and awesome to see. So just know that your students will be taken care of while they're at school. Our staff is going to really look after our kids like they are their own, because they are, like, they are our kids as well. And that's kind of how we look at them. And that's what makes schools successful. And so I just wanted to reiterate just how much our staff really cares and loves our kids. And even though they're a little nervous and there is angst, they're also excited to welcome them back. And they missed our kids just as much as I think a lot of our kids missed their teachers being in school. So even though there are a lot of questions, and I know there's a lot of nerves from a lot of our parents, there's also a lot of excitement. And so it's going to be a different school year. It's not going to be a traditional school year, but we're still going to do our best to make it a great school year. We do have some things in store as far as homecoming and pep rallies and things of that nature. So our goal is that if there are things that we have to do, obviously it's not going to be feasible to do a homecoming dance. But our goal is, instead of just canceling things, we're going to look to have some alternates in place to still make things special for our kids. Especially our seniors, because of the unknown. So our seniors we're gonna try to offer some perks to our seniors that maybe they haven't had before, like the late start and early release, like the senior common senior lounge area, to do the best we can, because we want to make sure that this is a special year for everyone. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. This will be available on YouTube, and I plan on sending this out to all of our parents so they can kind of take a look and review. But thank you so much for tuning in. We know it's dinner time. We know that we're taking time away from your families, but we do appreciate everything that you are doing, and thank you for your support this year. So it's going to be a trying year, but we think it's going to be a fun year. So thank you so much. If you do have any questions, like Ms. Taylor said, feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are in the chat box. You can also find those online. Phone call, email. We want to make sure that we're answering any concerns so you feel as safe as you can moving forward. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.